We walk amongst ghosts every day, be it sights of war and strife, or poverty and horror. The twisting, snaking paths are beautiful, but can lead us to some things undiscovered and terrifying. From the Mississippi Delta to the jungles of the Far East, the dead demand to be acknowledged. This is what we do here. Welcome to the House of Asher. Hello everybody, this is your host Steve Asher, and welcome to the show. I was just thinking about how weird it is that sometimes places that would put someone else off, maybe scare them away, would attract an interest. More than that, would attract downright a curiosity obsessively. I'm talking about locations where there's been murders or deaths. And moreover, I mean, there are cities that have these tours of locations where there've been murders, and especially like mob hits or things like that. You'll see this all over the place. Even places like Bardstown, Kentucky, or definitely Chicago, places like that, where there have been a lot of killing on the streets, in the streets, in front of storefronts. Now, that might not be too bad to the casual person, but that's different. You know what I'm saying? That's something you go and see, then you go out and have a nice dinner or whatever, and then you go home, okay? But it's not home. I want to talk about places where there have been murders, suicides, occult rituals, various types of abuse and murder. I mean, Lord, think of places like the Gacy home. You know, that's literally almost a shrine to some people. Now, of course, there's an interest in that. You know, I would say I have more than a passing interest in serial killers, but I don't know if I necessarily want to go to a home where there'd been all this victimization of people and then, you know, pick up a rock and collect it. I just think it's bad. I think it's bad juju. Myself, I really don't want any part of that. But what about it going further than that? Think about places like the Amityville home, the place in St. Louis where the actual original story of The Exorcist occurred. What about, say, the home where the Emily Rose original story happened? Would you want to go there? Would you want to spend some time there? My God, beyond that, would you want to live there? Would you want to walk up and down the same stairs where perhaps bodies were drug? Perhaps murders occurred? I don't know. I don't know if I could do it, personally. But, you know something I probably should have said before we even started this? You may be listening to this on Spreaker, iHeart, Spotify, a whole lot of different streaming services. If you have an opinion, especially if you're, say, listening to this on YouTube, leave a comment down there. I'm curious what you think about it. And have you ever lived somewhere like that? Have you lived somewhere like that unknowingly? Now, the way I understand it, by law, yes, they are supposed to basically include any information if there had been a death, if it's supposedly haunted, all this and that, which, yes, murder or a death or a suicide or something like that, that's quantifiable. How do you really quantify a haunting, though? How do you, people can be more sensitive to things. I've known some people that have worked in what I would consider extremely haunted locations and never had as much as a bump or a rumble or anything. Now, I think if you're looking for a haunting, you'll find a haunting. And if you're a person who just is like, I don't believe in that, I don't listen to that mess, you know what I'm saying, a tap in the wall be a mouse, and a cold spot it be a drafty window. And sometimes that is true, but not always. Now, I've been in homes that I later found out had been the site of deaths, has been the site of wakes, especially here in the Old South. People would set up with the dead. Now, this is usually the night before, maybe a night or two before the actual funeral, and this is to make sure the body wasn't disturbed. More often than not, in America, it was like you want to make sure that, the cats didn't get to the body or something like that. Now, of course, in Victorian times, there was the possibility of resurrectionists, body snatchers, grave robbers, whatever you want to call them. But that wasn't near as much of a problem as just your neighborhood alley cat deciding to get up there and chew on grandma's nose a little bit because it smells like food. That's just the nature of it, kids. I'm just telling you, if you got cats, you better, if you got somebody getting ready to pass in the family, you might want to find somewhere for them to be, because they will come hunting. Sorry to tell you, it's just the nature of it. But yeah, lived in a home, and there had been several wakes there. But I had spent the night at it was my brother's friend's house. He was a kind of a friend, but he was older, so he was kind of like, whatever. And I stayed the night with my brother. It was my brother Michael and at his friend Garen's house. And Garen was a cool kid. He was kind of makes you think of like Mike Mothersbaugh from Devo. Maybe for the younger kids, the guy who did the thing from Rugrats and a bunch of other stuff. Anyway, we were set up about half the night, picking guitar and BSing and stuff. Well, by about 2:30 or 3, we were all thoroughly tuckered out. So Garen went to his room, and Michael crashed on the living room couch. Well, me being the young one, I got the little pallet on the floor. That was fine with me. I kicked out, and I was pretty comfortable, I stretched out, and being up half the night, it wasn't long before I was fast asleep. Well, a couple minutes, I started hearing my brother calling to me. And not just really calling him, almost like yelling at me. He was like, Stevie, where you going, man? And I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, understand, he was laying on the couch. My feet were toward the couch. My head was away, facing toward the kitchen doorway. I said, I'm not going anywhere. He said, yeah, you are, man. What are you doing? I said, what are you talking about? He said, man, you're standing there at the doorway. You got your sheet on you or something weird. What are you doing? And I was still about half asleep, so it didn't really register with me. And I said, brother, my feet are about 1.5 feet from your head. I'm not going anywhere. I think you're having a dream. I felt him kind of tap my foot. He rolled back over, facing the couch, went to sleep. I didn't give it another thought. People have nightmares, people have dreams, people whatever. Well, next morning, crack of dawn, he's up. He's ready to go. He walks me out. So we get home, and he said, remind me to tell you something later. Okay. Well, we both get busy. School starts. I'm going back to school. He's working. Well, the weekend comes. We haven't had that little discussion. And I said, "Hey, brother, what had you so weird?" I said, "I don't just wander around people's houses." And he said, "Stevie, I'll tell you what, I didn't tell you then because I know it would have freaked you out." Which I'm like, okay, well, you're freaking me out a little bit now. What are we talking about? Well, he said, "Brother, this is the way things happen." Okay, we hung out, listened to music, farted around, played some games, and we went to bed, right? Right. And he said, "And you laid down exactly where you said you laid down." I said, "Yeah." I said, "But you didn't believe me." He said, "Well, there's a reason for that." I'm like, "Okay, well, do you want to give me a clue? What's up?" He said, "Man, I looked up and I thought you were, I don't know what you're doing, trying to scare me or be goofy or something, and was standing there with a very thin sheet over you." I said, "Okay." Said, "I didn't have a sheet, I had a blanket." He says, "Well, I quickly realized that, but at the time I didn't know what was going on." I said, "What did you see?" I said, "Brother, I saw something standing. Once I realized where your position your body was, I realized this thing was about 1.5 feet past your head." I said, "What do you mean, this thing?" He says, "Well, it's like this. I was calling out to you, and it stopped, and it just stayed there. And I was saying, 'Hey, what are you doing, man? What are you doing?' And it wouldn't move." I said, "Okay. I don't know. Maybe it was Garen." He said, No way, brother." I said, "Well, how do you know?" He said, "Well, here's the thing. When I reached down and I touched your leg, I never took my eyes off this thing." Like, okay. He said, "Steve, it turned its head just ever so slightly, and it sunk into the floor. It melted into the floor and disappeared." I was like, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Steve, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't human." I said, "Jesus Christ." He said, "Yeah, that's why I didn't tell you." Well, you know what happened? About a year or so later, we come to find out from a family friend that Garen's grandmother was going through a very bad emotional and health issue. And she was on the phone with her husband, and she shot herself in her chest, and her body collapsed right in that very spot. That very spot was no more than 1 foot past my head. Long story short, we never stayed at our friend Garen's again. But on that note, I have to say, everybody, thank you for tuning into the show. Please make sure to subscribe to steveasher.studio.com and make sure to enjoy your day. But as the trees set behind the pines and the shadows grow long, make sure to check behind your bed, check in your closet, look down toward the kitchen. Who knows, there may be something anomalous waiting for you. But you know what? There's knowledge in fear, so don't be afraid. But I want you guys, as always, to know I love you, love each other, and until next time, stay scared.